chapter 22, verse 14. And this verse says, Swayambhuvamanu continued, O wise man, I heard that you were prepared to marry. Please accept her hand, which is being offered to you by me, since you have not taken a vow of perpetual celibacy. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
We covered plus. So this was we covered? Yeah, we covered. I think we went a lot of verses actually, right? Yeah, we finished 14 to 15 hours. We finished. Let's see. 16, 16, 16 hours we finished. 17.
17.
17 years.
Okay, so I stand corrected. And we are on Canto 3, chapter 22, text 17. And it says, I have heard that Vishvavasu, the great Gandharva, his mind stupefied with infatuation, fell from his airplane after seeing your daughter playing with a ball on the roof of the palace, for she was indeed beautiful, with her tinkling ankle bells and her eyes moving to and fro. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is understood that not only at the present moment, but in those days also, there were skyscrapers. Herein we find the word harmya prishte. Harmya means a very big palatial building. Swad Vimanat means from his own airplane. Is accepted.
Prabhu, we can't hear Maharaj.
This is the mute. You don't want. That's fine. When you touch this one, goes into the mute. Red. If it is red, that means it's accept.
Okay, Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 22, Text 17. And it says, I have heard that Vishvavasu, the great Gandharva, his mind stupefied with infatuation, fell from his airplane after seeing your daughter playing with a ball on the roof of the palace, for she was indeed beautiful with her tinkling ankle bells and her eyes moving to and fro. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is understood that not only at the present moment, but in those days also, there were skyscrapers. Herein we find the word harmya prishte. Harmya means a very big palatial building. Svad Vimanat means from his own airplane. It is suggested that private airplanes or helicopters were also current in those days. The Gandharva Vishvavasu, while flying in the sky, could see Devahuti playing ball on the roof of the palace. Ball playing was also current But aristocratic girls would not play in a public place. Ball playing and other such pleasures were not meant for ordinary women and girls. Only princesses like Devahuti could indulge in such sports. It is described here that she was seen from the flying airplane. This indicates that the palace was very high, otherwise, how could one see her from an airplane? The vision was so distinct that the Gandharva Visvavasu was bewildered by her beauty and by hearing the sound of her ankle belt bangles, and being captivated by the sound and beauty, he fell down. Kardama Muni mentioned the incident as he had heard it. Okay, very interesting purport.
And also, probably the airplanes weren't making the kind of sounds now because they had to hear ankle bells. Yeah.
I didn't understand. What did you say?
In order for him to hear the sounds of the ankle bells at such a place, the aeroplane that he was in
Yeah.
is probably so sophisticated it wouldn't make normal sounds
Okay.
like the current airplane.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'd be good to know uh, how the airplane was uh, flying through the air, because airplanes flying through the air today, you can hear them. They make a lot of noise, right? And they also contaminate the environment with their, you know,
Yes.
gas, all that stuff. So I wonder what was the uh, type of propellant of the airplanes in those days. Okay, so usually, um, very exalted ladies would not be on the ground. They would be on the top of buildings, and they would be able to. Uh, they wouldn't walk, in the on the grounds. Uh, they would always be on these high, uh, you know, buildings, on the tops of these high buildings, and so you can see that there was a very, let's say, advanced society in ancient times, more advanced than today, uh, and women were always protected. They didn't walk around on the street or anything like that. And Prabhupada also says that even maybe like 100 years ago, uh, the uh, high class women would never even show their face in public. If they had to go somewhere, they would uh, they would have like four carriers, four men, and the lady would sit in a like something like a palanquin, and they would carry her from one place to another, and then the palanquin, the would be covered on four sides, and the lady would sit inside of it, and she would be taken from one place to another. Where here we're seeing that the ladies most of the time would spend time on the top of these high uh, buildings, and Prabhupada uses the word skyscraper, uh, and they would play on the roofs of these skyscrapers. So therefore, it says here. Let me read it again. This text Canto 3, chapter 22, text 17. I have heard that Visvavasu, the great Gandharva, his mind stupefied with infatuation, fell from his airplane after seeing your daughter playing with a ball on the roof of the palace. For she was indeed beautiful, with her tinkling ankle bells and her eyes moving to and fro. Okay, so obviously there was a culture and uh, with advanced vimanas existing uh, hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they there were, and then there were skyscrapers also. Uh, this is like this is like completely uh, different than what the scientists and archaeologists say, and um, and that's why Prabhupada says it is understood that not only at the present moment, but in those days also there were skyscrapers. Herein we find the word Harmya Priste. Harmya means a very big palatial building. Svad Vimanat means from his own airplane. It is suggested that private airplanes or helicopters were also current in those days. Those days we're talking is a very long time ago. The Gandharva Visvasvasu, while flying in the sky, could see Devahuti playing ball on the roof of the palace. Ball playing was also current, but aristocratic girls would not play in a public place. Ball playing and other such pleasures were not meant for ordinary women and girls. Only princesses like Devahuti could indulge in such sports. It is described here that she was seen from the flying airplane. This indicates that the palace was very high. Otherwise, how could one see her from an airplane? The vision was so distinct that Gandharva Viswavasu was bewildered by her beauty and by hearing the sound of her ankle bangles. And being captivated by the sound and beauty, he fell down. Kardama Muni mentioned the incident as he had heard it. So obviously, there was a very advanced uh, uh, civilization, and even more advanced than today. And also, the norms or the uh, practices of the society, especially the high society, was very specific. Women wouldn't be walking down on the street or anything like that. They would always be on top of buildings, and they would be able to. Uh, and they had all kinds of. First of all, they lived in very big palatial buildings, and there were private airplanes or helicopters, which were also current in those days. And girls, aristocratic girls, would not play in a public place. Ball playing and other such pleasures were not meant for ordinary women and girls. Only princesses like Devahuti could indulge in such sports. And and also that the palaces were very high. And of course, women like Devahuti were extremely beautiful, and they did not. They were not walking around on the street or anything like that. They were always in in these very tall buildings, and they were able to engage in some kinds of sports. So, and there were airplanes and so forth, and big palatial buildings, etc. Okay, so text 18. What wise man would not welcome her, the very ornament of womanhood, the beloved daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and sister of Uttanapada? Those who have not worshipped the gracious feet of the goddess of fortune cannot even perceive her, yet she has come of her own accord to seek my hand. Now, this is Kardama Muni speaking, and he's actually very, very obviously impressed by Devahuti. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kardama Muni praised the beauty and qualification of Devahuti in different ways. Devahuti was actually the ornament of all ornamented, beautiful girls. A girl becomes beautiful by putting ornaments on her body. But Devahuti was more beautiful than the ornaments. She was considered the ornament of the ornamented, beautiful girls. So it doesn't say that she uses makeup or mascara or anything like that. She had natural beauty, and she was ornamented with, you know, uh, with beautiful, uh, let's say, diamonds or rubies or things like that. She didn't use, mascara, and and she was very nicely dressed. And Kardama Munis praised the beauty and qualification of Devahuti in different ways. Devahuti was actually the ornament of all ornamented, beautiful girls. So when it says the ornament of all ornamented, beautiful girls, she had a natural beauty. She didn't need to use makeup and all other things that modern women use today. A girl becomes beautiful by putting ornaments on her body. But Devahuti was more beautiful than the ornaments. She was considered the ornament of the ornamented, beautiful girls. So an ornament is something you put on your body. It can be made of diamonds, or it can be made of rubies, or it can be made of other precious stones, and but Devahuti was even more beautiful than the ornaments. So just imagine, you know, such a beautiful woman. The demigods and Gandharvas were attracted by her beauty. Kardama, now, we're talking about demigods. We're not talking about ordinary people here. Demigods and Gandharvas. Gandharvas also, they're very, highly qualified musicians and singers. They were all attracted by her beauty. Kardama Muni, although a great sage, was not a denizen of the heavenly planets. But it is mentioned in the previous verse that Vishvavasu, who came from heaven, was also attracted by the beauty of Devahuti. Besides her personal beauty, she was the daughter of Emperor Swayambhuva and sister of King Uttanapada. Who could refuse the hand of such a girl? Well, obviously, uh, Devahuti was, um, let's say, and you have these different pageants or uh, uh, programs where the most beautiful woman is selected, as Miss America or some type of a extremely beautiful lady. But obviously, Devahuti was more beautiful than the ornaments. She was considered the ornament of the ornamented beautiful girls. So ornaments are, it could be diamonds, it could be rubies, it could be other precious, uh, you know, uh, types of
Mhm.
uh, ornaments. And she herself was considered the ornament of the ornamented beautiful girls. And it says demigods and Gandharvas were attracted by her beauty. So she has some kind of a what you would call a supernatural beauty. She's more beautiful than the ornaments. She was considered the ornament of the ornamented beautiful girls. And the demigods and Gandharvas, who are both very, handsome, uh, were attracted by her beauty. Kardama Muni, although a great sage, was not a denizen of the heavenly planets. So he's not, uh, he's more, uh, he was more earthly than the denizens of the heavenly planets. But as mentioned in the previous verse, that Vasu, who came from heaven, was also attracted by the beauty of Devahuti. Besides her personal beauty, she was the daughter of Emperor Swayambhuva and sister of King Uttanapada. Who could refuse the hand of such a girl? So she's from the highest level of what you would call exalted women and exalted family. Okay, so you have different categories of people in ancient times. Uh, Obviously, uh, Devahuti was not a what you would call um, Devahuti was in a very high class family, but she was not like a demigod. However, demigods and Gandharvas were attracted by her beauty. So she was an exceptional girl. Okay, so we'll go to text 19. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Well, obviously, Kardama Muni is a person you would say is complete. He's completely self uh, sufficient. He is determined to have a spiritual life, but yet he wants to get married and have, uh, I guess, children, but yet he's not attached. So here it says, purport, Kardama Muni expressed his desire for a very beautiful wife to Emperor Swayambhuva and accepted the emperor's daughter for marriage. Kardama Muni was in the hermitage practicing complete celibacy as a brahmachari. And although he had the desire to marry, he did not want to be a householder for the whole span of his life because he was conversant with the Vedic principles of human life. According to Vedic principles, the first part of life should be utilized in brahmacharya for the development of character and spiritual qualities. And in the next part of life, one may accept a wife and beget children, but one should not beget children like cats and dogs. So there was let's say, a very specific uh, way of men and women engaged in, marriage. It was not based on lust, and it was not like, I mean, the real purpose of marriage was not for sense pleasure. It was for having uh, very wonderful children and living, let's say, a very strict life of uh, self abdication from sense gratification, being free of it, simply engaging in spiritual activities. And it says here that Kardama Muni, he did not want to be a householder for the whole span of his life because he was conversant with the Vedic principles of human life. According to Vedic principles, the first part of life should be utilized in brahmacharya for the development of character. And that should go on to about 25 years, until one is 25 years old. And spiritual qualities. In the next part of life, one may accept a wife and beget children, but one should not beget children like cats and dogs. So, in other words, there is no uh, sex for pleasure, so called pleasure. And Prabhupada said once, people think that sex is nice, but actually it's not very nice at all. So, and sex was not, it was only used for, or only engaged in for procreating children. And then the parents took the responsibility of raising their children in a spiritual atmosphere so they would become nice devotees also. So, and they would follow this, what you would call the different parts of life. So there's a brahmachari part of life for the development of character, where there's celibacy of the boy, and of course of women too, of girls also, for the development of character. Character, okay, what does that mean? Character means they're able to control their mind and senses. Then they have character. Uh, they're not rogues and debauchees. They're men that can control their senses and their mind, and their main purpose in their life is to always remember God or Krishna and engage in regulated life. So, regulated life means a young boy remains celibate till he's 25 years old. He gets married when he's 25, and the marriage, he can be married until he's 50 years old. At that point, it takes uh, uh, vanaprastha, starts traveling different places with his wife to break the attachment to hearth and home. And then, when the wife agrees and the husband is confident, uh, they separate. The wife taken care of by the elders, sons, and the husband begins a life of let's say, uh, and, doing tapasya, and then eventually he becomes completely a mendicant, an advanced devotee. And so everything was planned. There were different, let's say, periods of life. Brahmachari, then uh, grihasta, then vanaprastha, and then sannyas. That was the whole program for men and women, because the women, they never became they were also, celibate and protected by their father, and then they get married and they're protected by the husband, and then uh, the husband and wife stop living in opulent house, things like that, begin to travel together, uh, and, and perform tapasya, and meet very exalted uh, personalities, spiritual personalities, and then eventually the wife goes and lives with her elder sons, and the husband takes sannyas. It was like that. Now, I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and there was only like, I think, myself and two other devotees, and one of them was Sham Sundar, and and as we were walking, and Prabhupada stopped, and he said, "Sham Sundar," he said, "why are the Grihastas in Maya?" Sham Sundar didn't say anything. He didn't try and answer that. And Prabhupada said that after that, he said, when I first came to your country, meaning the United States, my plan was to have only brahmacharis. He said, but then I saw that was not possible, because in your country, there's always intermingling of men and women. So then I was thinking, let them get married. Husband gives wife one boy, and then he uh, goes and takes sannyas. He said, and then he said, but then I saw that was not possible. So then I was thinking, let them get married. The boy gives the wife one son, and boy takes sannyas, right? And the wife raises the son. He said, no, that was not possible. And then he thought, then he said, then I thought, well, let's let them chant Hare Krishna, everything will be all right. So Prabhupada was very witty. uh, okay. Um, so, what we're reading here is a an explanation of a very exalted culture and very advanced technologically. They're not, uh, people that have no advanced technological things like airplanes and so forth. They were highly educated, and they and and um, had all the uh, different uh, things that that we see today, but even better. And so they had their own vimanas, their own airplanes, and there were very big, tall buildings like skyscrapers, and the women, or very high class women, they would always be on the roofs of these skyscrapers. They didn't walk in the street, anything like that, and they were protected like that. and they would be seen by men in airplanes, right? So you can imagine, there's very tall skyscrapers and there are airplanes flying around, and beautiful women would be playing on top of these top of these skyscrapers, but never, walking on the ground. Uh, so, and then obviously weddings were arranged and by suitable boys and suitable ladies. They would get married. So it was a very exalted culture, let's put it like that. Okay, so um, on text 19, it says, Kardama Muni says, therefore I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. So, how does a young man come to conclusions like this? Well, because, first of all, the culture itself is based on uh, controlling the mind and the senses and engaging in devotional service. The whole culture was based on that. It's not that it's based on the principle of I will get up, I will grow up and be educated in mundane knowledge and get a great job, and then I'll get married, and I will make a lot of money and have a lot of sense gratification. No, it was not based on things like that. Uh, it was a very elevated spiritual culture, and but yet they had airplanes uh, and helicopters, and they had skyscrapers, and they had a culture that was highly advanced in spiritual culture and spiritual activities. And you can just understand that here. It says, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept a life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. So it's not that, well, I will, you know, uh, impregnate my wife with semen, she'll have a baby, and we'll live happily ever after, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending like animals. what, what he's saying here is that I should accept a life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Why does it say it's free from envy? Well, because when a boy is trained as a brahmachari and eventually gets married, and but what kind of marriage it is it? Uh, it's a life of devotional service, uh, accepted by the most perfect human beings. So therefore, it's free from envy. There's no lust, anger, greed, and envy. It's just it's a life of self uh, control, and the goal is engaging in devotional service to please Krishna. So Kardama Muni expressed his desire for a very beautiful wife to Emperor Swayambhuva and accepted the emperor's daughter for marriage. Kardama Muni was in the hermitage practicing complete celibacy as a brahmachari. And although he had the desire to marry, he did not want to be a householder for the whole span of his life because he was conversant with the Vedic principles of human life. And what are the Vedic principles of human life? Well, you remain a brahmachari till you're around 25 years old, then you get married, and you stay married until you're about 50, and then you take vanaprastha, you travel with your wife. After the children are adults, you travel with your wife to holy places, and then with the permission of your wife, you leave her with the elder sons in the protection of the elder sons, and you begin a life of tapasya, and then eventually you become a sannyasi, and the wife remains very chaste, protected by her sons, and so forth. It was a very ordered uh, and life, and there were different periods, like 0 to 25. You're celibate. Uh, you're celibate. You get married, and then for 25 years you're married, and then you begin to uh, become free of house and hearth and house, and you go on pilgrimage with your wife, and then eventually, wife is put in the uh, it goes and lives with her sons, and the husband takes sannyas. There's a period of vanaprastha, and then he becomes sannyas, and that was the order of life. Uh, that you become brahmachari, then grihastha, then vanaprastha, and then sannyas. And the women also lived like, you know, uh, very renounced, and always protected by the father, then by the husband, and then by the grown sons. So women were always protected. Okay. So it says here in the second paragraph, Kardama Muni desired to beget a child who would be a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should beget a child who can perform the duties of Vishnu. Otherwise, there's no need to produce children. There are two kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life. And the other is a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches the world the ultimate goal of life. As will be described in later chapters, Kardama Muni begot such a child, Kapila, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, who enunciated the philosophy of Sankhya. Great householders pray to God to send his representative so that there may be an auspicious movement in human society. This is one reason to beget children. Another reason is that a highly enlightened parent can train a child in Krishna consciousness so that the child will not have to come back again to this miserable world. Parents should see to it that the child born of them does not enter the womb of a mother again. Unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there is no need to marry or produce children. If human society produces children like cats and dogs for the disturbance of social order, then the whole world becomes hellish as it has in this age of Kali. In this age, neither parents nor their children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, defend, and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society. Kardama Muni explains beforehand that he would not associate with the girl Devahuti for the whole duration of his life. He would simply associate with her until he had a child. In other words, sex life should be utilized only to produce a nice child, not for any other purpose. Human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. After fulfilling this responsibility to produce a nice child, one should take sannyasa and engage in the perfectional Paramahamsa stage. Paramahamsa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are 4 stages within the sannyasa life, and Paramahamsa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahamsa Samhita, or the treatise for the highest class of human beings. The Paramahamsa is free from envy. In other stages, even in the householder stage of life, there's competition and envy. But since the activities of the human being in the Paramahansa stage are completely engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service, there is no scope for envy. In the same order as Kardama Muni, about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhakti Vinoda also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers to the Lord, he had as his child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciples. So that's very nice purport. So we see how the what you would call animalistic culture of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending was not really the goal of life. The goal of life was to have self-control, control the mind and the senses, and focused on Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it says here that Kardama Muni would uh, um, he would simply associate with her, with Devahuti, until she had a child. In other words, sex life should be utilized only to produce a nice child, not for any other purpose. And then after having a child, then he, Kardama Muni, went back to his life of celibacy and self-abnegation, in which he didn't engage in any sense gratification. So that's why it says human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. After fulfilling his responsibility to produce a nice child, one should take sannyas and engage in the perfectional Paramahamsa stage. Paramahamsa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are 4 stages within the sannyasa life. The Paramahamsa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahamsa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. So Prabhupada is explaining what is the most exalted, let's say, way of living and preparing oneself to go back to Godhead. However, that's not what's happening today, unfortunately. Even amongst devotees, I mean, earlier, there were many divorces amongst devotees. You know, Prabhupada became so upset with that he decided not to not to initiate grihastas, but to let them get married legally. And after some time, when it looked like their marriage was going to be steady, then he would initiate them. Whereas he was initiating right away, and then it was uh, letting the devotees get married, and then many times there was breakdown of the marriage, and the whole thing looked like a joke. So to stop that, he stopped the uh, you know marrying devotees, and he asked them, "You get married legally, and let's see what's going to happen. And if you stay together, then I will, uh, initiate you, etc." Um, okay, so Paramahansa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are four stages within sannyasa life. The Paramahansa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahansa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. Well, Prabhupada is explaining all these things because this is what he was aiming to do. And he did succeed somewhat in doing this. Uh, there were devotees who actually uh, maintained their vows and did not fall down. And there were a lot of other devotees that did fall down. You know, even sannyasis, even in the time of Prabhupada, there were sannyasis that fell down, and there were a lot of grihastas that divorced, separated, and divorced. So it's not easy to make in Kali Yuga to make these types of ideal life. Uh, but here's a very significant statement that Prabhupada makes. He says, um, in this age, neither parents nor the children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, defend, and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society. Kardama Muni explains beforehand that he would not associate with the girl Devahuti for the whole duration of his life. He would simply associate with her until she had a child. In other words, sex life should be utilized only to produce a nice child, not for any other purpose. Human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. Even Lord Chaitanya himself, although he was married, uh, his first wife left her body. Then he got married again because the mother, wanted him to. But then he left his mother and his new wife and started preaching. Um, so uh, he manifested the ideal, let's say, uh, person in spiritual life. Now, can other people do this? No. We have to go through all the different stages. You have brahmachari, you have married life, grihastha life, then vanaprastha life, and then and complete, let's say, uh, separation and until death. So we can't jump or skip any of those stages. So Lord Chaitanya says, this is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. Human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. Now, if the husband and wife were both Krishna conscious, then there's no reason for them to separate. And they can live together until they leave their bodies. But they live like sannyasi. Right? They will, have children. Then when the children are grown, then they go on pilgrimages to break the attachment in the home and hearth, and then they can keep doing that and preach together, and eventually, leave their bodies, go back to Godhead. It's only when there's material attachments that there should be separation, at certain stages of life. Okay, so most of Lord Chaitanya's devotees were grihastas. Almost all of them were grihastas. But yet, they were living this type of life where they would be engaged in Krishna consciousness. And it says here, Kardama Muni, after fulfilling his responsibility to produce a nice child, one would take sannyas and engage in a perfectional Paramahansa stage. Paramahansa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are 4 stages within sannyasa life. The Paramahansa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahansa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. The Paramahansa is free from envy. In other stages, even in the householder stage of life, there is competition and envy. But since the activities of the human being in the Paramahansa stage are completely engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service, there is no scope for envy. In the same order as Kardama Muni, about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhaktivinoda also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. Well, he had, 13 children. But he wanted one that would just be dedicated to preaching the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took a vow of celibacy for his whole life. He never got married. And he preached his whole life and established a good foundation of Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada accepted himself and also expanded it all over the world. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he made, the first, let's say, step of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. Then his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, built an organized, very organized program and expanded the movement so that it could be spread all over the world. And then comes Srila Prabhupada, he actually spread it all over the world. So it's a gradual thing. But Thakur Bhaktivinoda also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers, the Lord he had as his child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciples. So that's a very humble statement by Srila Prabhupada, you know. And he's not denying that the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur are also spreading the movement or the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world. So he's not criticizing his god brothers. He's saying, yeah, they're also preaching, and of course, Srila Prabhupada is preaching. Okay, so I think our time is up. We should understand that, okay, Srimad Bhagavatam is called Paramahamsa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. So this is what Krishna consciousness is aiming for, to elevate people to the highest, what you would call uh, level of Krishna consciousness, to become Paramahamsas. Now, can everyone achieve that? No, I don't think so. But there are different levels, of course, of Paramahansa. But Prabhupada wanted to have at least some of his devotees on that top level, Paramahansa order of life. And the other devotees should also have very regulated life and make spiritual advancement. The Paramahansa is free from envy. In other stages, even in the householder stage of life, there is competition and envy. But since the activities of the human being in the Paramahansa stage are completely engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service, there is no scope for envy. In the same order as Kardama Muni about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhakti Vinoda also wanted to be a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers to the Lord, he had a child as he had as his child Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciple. So Prabhupada is not denying that he was the only disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that was preaching. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I think he had like uh, uh, almost 10,000 disciples. And some of them were very highly advanced, Vaishnavas. And they were preaching, and then their disciples are also preaching, and Prabhupada is preaching, and his disciples are also preaching. So it's not that Prabhupada was, let's say, the only one. There are others, in his god brothers, that are also preaching. They also have their, disciples, and those disciples are also preaching. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Yeah.
ISKCON, we don't designate anybody Paramahamsa like that.
In ISKCON? Yeah, why not?
But there
Are there people called that way directly?
Like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, like that? You can do it. Is that what you mean?
Well, there are some devotees that are on that level, but they don't
Advertise.
advertise it. Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. Like,
Paramahansa is the highest level of sannyasa life. Okay. So there are 4 stages within the sannyasa life, and Paramahansa is the highest order.
Goswami fast some.
What?
Goswami.
That means he can control his senses. Go means the senses. Goswami means that he controls his senses.
No, it's not in the sannyasi. The four states of sannyasi. Goswami.
Well, let's put it like this: that the stage of a pure devotee is even higher than the different stages. Right? It's the highest stage. It's Paramahansa stage. So it says here there are 4 stages within the sannyasa life, and Paramahansa is the highest order. So your question is, has anyone in ISKCON attained the Paramahansa stage? Yeah, there are some. One was devotee Prabhupada who left his body, but what was his name now?
Jayanand,
What's that?
Saint
Jan-
right, Maharaj?
yeah,
For Radha Yatra, we put his.
yeah. He made the first Rath Yatra. Yeah, he was a Paramahansa, definitely, and very, very pure devotee. All the good, all elevated devotees like that leave the planet early. No, but there, the point is, when there's no competition here. Someone's a Paramahansa, someone's not a Paramahansa. Everyone is engaged in
In fact, that
devotion.
is the thing. If you reach Paramahamsa, there is no envy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no competition envy.
No, if you reach that stage, you become very humble, and normal people cannot recognize who is a Paramahansa. It's only when, because why? Because a Paramahansa does not uh, give any publicity about himself. It goes about regulated devotional service in a very humble way.
Fortunate, the Paramahamsa Nityananda.
Yeah, not like that. He's not a Paramahansa.
He completely
Fake.
destroyed the sanctity of his word.
Maybe there are in Vrindavan, there might be a lot of Paramahamsas. I mean, but normal people might not know.
Yeah.
The what was
In Vrindavan?
Yes.
Yeah, there might be a lot of Paramahamsas, people who might be living the highest order of sannyasa life.
Yeah.
But they don't advertise. They don't
advertise.
do anything different or special. So normal people might not even recognize or know.
Yeah.
Right.
Krishna Maharaj, I had one question.
Yes.
So Devahuti and Kardamamuni, they have like the highest character in human form. Why are they still on the earth? Why did they even come?
Why what?
Why were they still in the material world? They have such higher character. Like, what is still stopping them in this or keeping them in this material world?
How do you know they're still in the material world?
At least in this, no. In that, when the incident was described, for at least in Srimad Bhagavad, at that time they were there. Why were they even there at that time? Did they have like a certain purpose? Maybe it kind of explained later that okay, you had to get married and then only to either help a soul get liberated once you have a child or like produce like the ray of supreme personality of Godhead to help the next
Generation.
next generation of humanity. Is it because of that or like I was just contemplating?
Well, no, look, there are different levels, different periods of life. From 0 to 25. Is chastity, and from 25 to 50, there's marriage, and then there's a period of vanaprastha that could be, I don't know, 5, 10, maybe 15 years. And then there's sannyas, right? So the wife is living with her husband until the moment he takes sannyas. Right. And so that's the general, you know, different periods of life and different occupations. And when I say occupations, different uh, mm, types of service that you do to attain this eventually liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So if people follow this system of brahmachari and grihastha, then vanaprastha, and then sannyas, uh, that is the whole purpose of human life.
I
It's
think
not,
her question is like, why were they even born as humans?
Yes.
Like, if they are so elevated, why were they already born as humans?
well, sometimes, exalted personalities appear in the material world to give an example of what is a real human life, and then they go, they go back to Vaikuntha. So we shouldn't be concerned about details like that. We should rather uh, see what the person is teaching, right? And you can understand that Prabhupada, when he came, he was preaching to very low class people. Well, of course, there were devotees that were coming from, some devotees came from very wealthy families, but still they were low class in the sense of having a simple life. And he completely elevated them. And he was aiming to have, I was on a morning walk with him. He said when he first came to the United States, his plan was only to have sannyasis. Then he saw it wasn't possible. Then he said he was thinking, let them get married, and husband gives wife one son, wife goes to Vrindavan, husband takes sannyas. Then he saw that was not possible. So then he said, then just let them chant Hare Krishna. So, he had to do whatever was necessary to establish Krishna consciousness. And, he let, men and women live in the same temple. He was criticized for that. But he said, well, if they're following Krishna consciousness, there won't be any problem. And for the most part, there wasn't any major problem. And eventually, boys and girls got married. At first everyone was celibate, but by mixing together like that, there started a period where now uh, very few people were completely celibate, and there were a lot of marriages. And Prabhupada did not, let's say, um, did not criticize the devotees that wanted to get married. And he officiated in many marriages of his devotees. Uh, he was trying to establish Krishna consciousness, right? And he was dealing with people who were, we were all mostly living sinful lives. And somehow or other, he had to do something to get us to stop being sinful and to engage in Krishna consciousness. So he did whatever he thought was necessary in order to establish the movement, and he did it. He established the movement, and it's still going on, right? Uh, and he was very liberal in many ways. He was also very strict, but in another sense, he was very liberal, and he's being criticized by his godbrothers for that. You know, why are you initiating these white people? But then they saw, oh, wow, they say all these white people, they're all like, most of them are really good devotees. So they thought, only Indians could become devotees. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Always remember Prabhupada and all the mercy he's given us by giving us service.
There's one more living Paramahamsa, Maharaj.
Who's
His
that?
name is Paramahamsa Vishwananda.
Okay.
Mayavad Paramahamsa.
Is there only one? I'm surprised. So many people take
Has to in the Google only
Okay, one person.
showing that. And
So he's not counting Paramahamsa Nityananda.
yeah, Nityananda showed up, but we know.
We like it.
They are very smart in the sense, Maharaj, they exploit the
word.
keywords. Like they pick the exact forms and
They'll use all the words and concepts from Shastra.
Yeah.
Because of the,
They
right?
will
But
use
India,
the-
I don't follow
The
Shastra.
Prabhupada has written somewhere specifically. You really want to create your own philosophy, don't use Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
Right.
But they can't create without Bhagavad Gita. That's why they all take from these. And they'll say, oh, I don't read. Even
Yeah.
Sadhguru, if you hear, he'll say, oh, I haven't read anything. But all the concepts, like Sankhya Yoga, like all the things that he uses comes from Shastra.
Whatever Prabhupada did was out of necessity to establish, and he succeeded.
When sometimes to create the perfect order,
Yeah.
you can't go from A to B. You have to have
A to Z.
yeah, exactly. But you have to go through the steps, and
Yeah.
Prabhupada had to adjust. But in the end, somebody who's seriously following his principles can definitely achieve the highest.
Definitely. Prabhupada was very kind, very gentle, but he could be very hard also. That was to, correct the mistakes that the disciples were making. But in general, he's very, very merciful, and he was liberal. He lets women go on go on the altar. This is unspoken.
Even within India.
Right. So he was there to.
Yeah, he was in that way. He was most liberal
Yeah.
because he really saw them as pure souls,
Yeah.
so that everybody has the right to.
Yeah.
sometime some visitor came and that person asked the same question. How come the women are on the altar?
Yeah. Well, they're not in India.
Yeah.
In ISKCON, only the boys are allowed to be, pujaris. But in the West, we have a lot of women that are doing great service. So you see, Prabhupada was smart enough to make adjustments without violating the principles of Krishna consciousness. That's why he was able to spread the movement the way he did. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Any other questions or comments online?